Great. Well, Julian's been doing the organization and the heavy lifting on getting folks together for these calls, primarily designed to focus on some of the ideas from Georgia Tech students and Georgia Gwinnett, folks that were involved in Maryland's conference, I guess a month or so ago. And I've really enjoyed getting to know some of these students, including Julian, who's kind of our host, and he's now doing an internship at the Public Service Commission. He's, introduced some ideas, to me that I haven't thought about for a while, like thermal cooling and district cooling and things that we're talking a little bit about. And then this topic today, James and I have talked about this many times. James has talked me off the ledge on this topic today about solar decommissioning. And I guess, with Julian's interest in it and Jamie with the I guess the letter from that House Rural Committee or whatever, we've had to really start thinking about it again. So maybe Jamie, you can set up the topic, and then we'll go to Julian and about his interest, especially since he's done a lot of repurposing, recycling of equipment and that kind of thing. Jamie, why don't you set it up?
Yeah, this issue came up several months ago, and James, I think you may be over the legislature, you may have heard some rumblings of this, but my understanding was Jay Powell. It was I guess an issue that he had brought up to this committee, and it was basically what's going to happen with the increase in solar farms, what's going to happen at the end of the life, and it was something this Rural Development Committee was looking at, and ultimately they did require the commission. We've got to submit a report over by June 1st, which my team is working on that as we speak. But I think at the end of the day, I was working with Commissioner Shaw, because I think he was kind of the contact with this committee, and we were basically saying, we really didn't think the state needed to get involved. We think it's really more of a county or landowner issue. And I think Georgia Power agrees with that. And we were like, we don't really need legislation or anything to go to address this issue. But at the end of the day, this report is a requirement by the commission. And we're, like I said, it's still in draft form. The commissioners, of course, are going to have the final say on what we put in it, as in we don't really need intervention, or, it should be a county or landowner. Honestly, I think it's the landowner's responsibility to get it in their land lease agreements. I think that's what Georgia Power has it when they lease land for military. It's clearly in there. It has to get back, or the military base gets to keep the project. It's really up to them what's going to happen at the end of the 35 years. So that's kind of where I kind of would like to see it. I know some counties are charging decommissioning bonds. I've talked to a couple of the development authorities recently, and I think at the end of the day, it could cost them some projects if developers have to factor in the cost of the decommissioning bond, but that is something counties are starting to look at. So I think, this is something that personally haven't given a lot of thought to. I know Commissioner Echols has been talking about it for years, about what's going to happen to all these solar panels. We can't wait 20 years to find out. So this paper was very timely for at least us to get to thinking what we need to do. Currently, Georgia Power doesn't have a requirement in their PPA, as you well know. It's not a requirement Georgia Power has put in there, or the commissions made Georgia Power put in there. So that's kind of where we're at.
Yeah, and so, it is something that I guess I've been thinking about since going out to in Golden, Colorado, maybe 5 years ago, because they were talking about it. Maybe it was after the big Taylor County project went in, that I began thinking about it. Of course, James is a go-to person for me, and James, why don't you tell the group what you told me 5 years ago, and then 3 years ago, and then we'll go to Julian. But let's get where we were at 5 years ago, 3 years ago, and maybe even where you think we are right now on this topic.
Well, as a conservationist, I'm all for the recycling of all these materials. At Radiance, we would recycle the styrofoam in the inverter boxes. I mean, we try very hard to be conscious of selecting materials that are recyclable, that, you know, I mean, the solar panels are made of materials that are easily recyclable. The market has not yet occurred because there's not really a demand for it, as most of these projects are now 10 years or under. But this issue is being perpetuated in what I call FUD, fear, uncertainty, and doubt, by enemies of solar. And, you know, it's not people that are really seeking recycling of any materials. They're using it as a wedge. And if they want information on it, Bill Nussey's myth-busting report on recycling solar panels is a really fantastic, well-documented, well-researched summary. And that would be the first place I would recommend they go. But NREL, and you know, I'm happy to provide links like I provided you. But this is really being perpetuated by people that don't care about recycling. They have an agenda. They're a NIMBY wanting to stop a project in their backyard, or I don't really know who. You know, I can't really tell you who behind that. I mean, Tim, you and I both care deeply about rural issues. I come from rural Georgia. I love working on rural issues. Solar has been a very bright spot in rural Georgia in providing property taxes in perpetuity, you know, millions of dollars going into school districts. We built projects in rural counties like Millen, Georgia, that hadn't seen an investment in decades. You know, in Camilla, Georgia, the first 20 megawatt we built was the third largest investment in the county ever. It was $52 million. Now, you know, that's paled by these much larger projects. So I think we need to kind of get to the root of these questions and find out what people really want to know. I'll make one other comment. There is one kind of outlier in this, in that first solar panels are made of cadmium telluride, and it does need to be recycled differently than the other materials. They have a supply chain that's built to do that. They have the ability to capture those panels. So, you know, this is a technical issue. We can go as technical as people want to go, but I think there is a lot of fear, uncertainty, and doubt and FUD being created by opponents.
All right, Julian, let's go to you, because you've had the opportunity over the last many years to recycle computers, give a little bit of your background, why you're interested in this topic, and some of the research that you've done, and what you're thinking the long-term solution is.
Well, in the electronics recycling business, it's long been kind of clear to us that this issue would land in our plates when the time came, and it has for me personally. It's been 15 years, but I did recycle quite a few panels for Southface, and I'd rather actually not get too bogged down in this at the moment, because we could easily spend an hour talking about PV recycling. But from what we've looked at with the rest of Jamie's team too, the hazards seem pretty minimal for the most part. And when you talk about recycling, it really boils down to the economics. What's it going to take? Transportation costs. What's it going to take to actually recover glass? And it's not actually that simple. Even clean glass, the economics of recycling are a challenge. But a couple of weeks ago, actually, Commissioner Echols had a great suggestion, which was to repurpose end-of-life solar panels as a building material. And they could be used for roofs of agricultural buildings, for example. I think that's a great idea. I mean, these were built to be storm-proof from the get-go, so why not take that structural integrity and use it as a building material?
All right. Other comments from anybody else today, just on this whole idea of maybe ideas for Jamie regarding decommissioning. Obviously, we're going to be, they're asking the PSC to give comment on this. And I personally, want to see more guidelines on this, and because I don't know that counties are going to do the right thing necessarily. Some of these are very poor counties, and I don't know that they may just contract with someone to take them and dump them somewhere. And I just think in the long run that's not helpful. So I am interested in us giving some comment about.
Commissioner, can I ask James Marlowe a question?
Yes, of course.
The solar model ordinance, which I think you were involved with, James, or at least you followed, it really just barely touches on this issue. And it really, I think what John had told me, it really just says that we should have plans and insurance throughout, throughout the process, commercial liability insurance. And that sounds like a good thing. And like I said, I don't know how many landowners actually are putting in that you must return this to pre-solar, like how you found it. That's kind of where I think it would be with the landowner when they do the leases. But that ship has sailed. We have some out there. What are your thoughts on plans, requirements of plans, bonds, and are there landowners out there requiring this, pre-use back to how you found it?
Well, I did work very closely with that model ordinance, and it's a good ordinance. I wouldn't tell you it's great. I do think requiring a decommissioning plan should be a requirement. A bond is actually not even easy to get. It's just not an instrument that people bond routinely. So, I would discourage a bonding requirement. That's usually put in place by people that are essentially NIMBY and they want to try to get it stopped, and it adds cost and is perpetuated by people that don't want solar to grow. The removal of a solar field is really straightforward. I mean, really there's 5 components. You've got, you're going to go in, you're going to clear the land, you're going to, if it's a peanut field, you don't do anything. You drive up, you start driving piles, you put a fence up, you have conductors that sometimes now aren't even in the ground. They simply go in a wire harness between panel to panel. It's made out of aluminum or copper, which is readily recyclable. The glass is really kind of the issue, but the conductors, the aluminum, copper, the steel, those are all readily recycled, oftentimes in the county itself. I don't want to see these things landfilled. Kind of the exception has been some of the storm damaged materials which were hastily taken to landfills. And in many cases, they don't have a lot of mass either because these panels are very, very thin. They don't have a lot of mass. The glass is not that thick. The aluminum frames are very easily recycled.
Okay. So are you seeing landowners when the lease agreements have any of this, get it back to pre-construction? Have you seen it in any of your projects that you guys have done?
I have seen that. In most cases, what the landowners want to do is renew it and then do what's called repowering. So go in and put new panels on it, put new inverters on it. I think you're going to see a lot of repowering because these are sites that are suitable for solar. They have good interconnection. They are paying property taxes, in the majority of the cases. So the county benefits, the school districts benefit. So a repowering, I think, will be the more common situation. And in some of those cases, what they'll do is take out non-functional panels and remove those, recycle those, repurpose those, and put newer panels in and kind of consolidate, kind of like building a portfolio, dollar cost average in and kind of, make it more effective. Inverters are now more cost effective, more efficient. Newer panels, commonly now people use a 400 watt 72 cell module, so you get more output in the same surface area.
Okay, thank you.
Question, has anyone, and I don't know the answer to this, it's just a question, has anyone looked at what European communities may be doing around this? Because I would assume that they would have a little bit more progressive stance on afterlife of renewable technology. I don't know what they've done. It's more of a question. I don't know if you looked at it, Jamie, or if anyone else has taken a look to see.
I have not. I know I sent a report around to everyone that I have not read. It was quite long, but it was from Europe, right, Julian? I think they have a little bit of a different take on it, but I don't know. I have not researched that as much.
As I remember, Europe is mandating recycling of PV.
Well, I would assume that would be right. Yeah.
You do see more stringent requirements. You see more stringent commitments by the manufacturers themselves. And they're a little bit further ahead of us. I mean, some of the plants are a little bit older than us, particularly in Germany, which was a leader. So, you know, they are a little bit further along in developing the recycling economics. And, you know, that's always a good thing because you get to learn on what they've done. They don't have the preponderance of large plants that we have. They do have large plants, of course, in Spain and other places, but you know, they have a lot more rooftop solar than we do, a lot more distributed solar.
Right.
James, those the feed-in tariff that started back in 2000, I guess, as Germany was doing their first batch, those were, I think, 20-year contracts. So those are coming up this year, right? So they're not going to get 43 euro cents a kilowatt. They're going to get maybe not get anything, and maybe not. I don't know that they'll still have first on the grid privileges and everything that they had before. So we could see over the a wave of DG in Germany go offline, do you think, or have you been following that at all?
No, I don't think. I mean, you're going to see more energy storage like Sonnen, which has their North American headquarters there in Tucker. You know, they're capturing more of that. We're using it more effectively than just, you know, during peak sunlight hours. The decommissioning of coal continues in Germany. The opposition to nuclear is very prevalent there, as you're well aware. So, you know, solar continues to be a good thing, both for economics, for utilities that properly capture it, and, you know, for environmental benefits. So, you know, it continues to be a very positive energy component.
All right. Anything else on this topic today before we move to something else?
I was just going to say quickly that the student that I partnered with last semester on a research paper is German, and he's back in Germany now, so I could follow up with him. He's really got his ear to the ground in terms of what's happening and all kinds of issues over there.
So what happened to those panels that were on top of the Georgia Tech nanotorium? Those panels that were put on in '96, they're gone, right? Do you know where they went to, or did they repurpose those? Anybody?
My understanding is they're still there. They were decommissioned. Radiance decommissioned them due to some wire management issues, but my understanding is the solar hot water collectors were removed because of a safety issue. They were at end of life essentially, but the PV, as far as I know, is still on the building. We've had many conversations about repowering that facility. You'd have about double the energy production in the same surface area, but repowering of that would be very straightforward. It's a standing seam roof. It's a really simple retrofit.
And I would echo what James is saying. As far as I know, they're still there too. Now, of course, the new kid on the block is the living building on campus, and that features the new state-of-the-art 22% sun power modules in a quite a bit smaller footprint area and around 330 kilowatts of that. So I don't know if Georgia Tech is looking at the natatorium to see if they're going to rechange up those modules. I think focus has shifted to an eco-commons area in the north part of the campus in terms of making that fully sustainable, starting with the living building.
Julian and Paul, since y'all are affiliated with Georgia Tech, I mean, it seems like those panels that are sitting on top of an existing building still have some useful life. I mean, James, you said it's a wiring issue. I mean, wouldn't it be fairly cheap just to keep those things going behind the meter there? I don't understand.
I mean, the panels themselves are a little bit like old computers. I mean, a lot of old computers do get exported to the third world. And, right now, a lot of people, even in this work at home environment, have taken old computers and made them into Chromebooks, essentially. So, those panels still have value, much in the same way that BP panels that were moved from BP service stations to Southface, but they do, like everything, have an end of life. I mean, you wouldn't want to move those to another facility, but when that system was installed, it was the largest rooftop solar array in the world. And Dr. Rahatke and SolarX and other leaders, they built it to the state of the art, but the wire management was kind of the weak link in that era, and that they didn't protect the wire. The wire wasn't as UV resistant, wasn't quite as robust as the wire that we would use today. We also put it in cable trays to protect it from UV. We do things differently today with the learnings that we've had over those, which I guess that was built in 95. So, in the 25 years, I mean, that system did what it was designed to do. I mean, it was an exemplary system in its day, and it lasted, fairly effectively. It could have used more preventative maintenance. That would be the one thing that, I think Tech would probably tell you they learned on that, is that doing an annual PM and doing a little bit more care and feeding would have extended the life of that system. But that system proves that solar panels last a long time. They produce the energy projected, and it was a safe, functional, system.
Another quick comment about Southface, since you brought up the BP salvage panels that Southface salvaged from BP gas station canopies. Southface actually never got their solar canopy working, but it's an effective sunshade, so their rooftop patio is a nice shaded area. But I was speaking with their former operations manager just the other day, and I said to him, would you want one of those year 2000 BP amorphous silicon solar panels? And he said, no, you couldn't give it to me.
I mean, now we have Becky on the call. Now 4 Tech people here. I mean, at the risk of beating a dead horse here about the nanotorium, you've got solar panels that are at the end of their life. They're sitting on your campus. They're not being used. Why not have a constructive project that would show all the rest of us on a very tiny scale that you can take those, and you don't have to landfill them. You're not going to send them back to the manufacturer. You're going to repurpose them in some way. So have some kind of contest on campus with who can come up with the best idea for this. I mean, obviously they're great shade over a parking lot. There's probably other uses. I mean, but they're right there. They're your property. I mean, James, what's wrong with letting Tech students do something with those?
Well, I think it'd make a nice project. I mean, in the third world, a lot of old panels have turned into tables and coffee tables and actually had an additional life. We've given them a number of proposals over the years to partner with Georgia Power, to work with third-party companies like Cherry Street or others to, come in and decommission, complete the removal of that, repower it, and then come up with creative things to do, with the panels. So, I think that's all part of it,
Sol, what's that you're posting right there?
Oh, that's a list of all the solar on campus. So it's not just the natatorium, but we've actually had solar at the Carbon Neutral Lab there too, and the Clough Undergraduate Learning Commons also has solar on its roof too. So you'll actually see some nice pictures if you click on that link. You'll see pictures of all the solar on campus, except for the new living building, which is relatively new, so it's not there right now. And it's probably the largest solar system on campus. So yeah, I mean, it's a great idea. I don't know how to proceed with that though, I guess, whether it's the campus sustainability center or whatever to perhaps SLS or come up with an idea to proceed to do something with those modules, as you say, on the natatorium.
Becky, you just joined our call. We're talking about the decommissioning of solar today. You know, and because the Public Service Commission has to send a response to the rural, what is it called, Jamie? The rural, you're muted. I can't hear you.
I think it's the Rural Development Committee. Does that sound right, Julian? Yeah.
Yes, ma'am. Yep.
Yes. So we've got to give them what we think is the, you know, the best policy moving forward. And so then we got over to the tech campus, Becky, and we were talking about the natatorium and the panels that were installed there in 95 that are apparently still there that aren't connected because of some wiring issues, James said. And so, you know, I'm all about trying to, you know, do things on a small scale, be successful, and then, you know, scale it up. And I also want to be, you know, realistic and create, you know, sustainable mechanisms. So, you know, I would, you know, for example, you know, recycling of tires or, you know, now the recycling of panels. I would like for us to come up with a state solution that would make it easy to do this. I'm just not sure what the solution is. Becky, have you had any thoughts on decommissioning solar, recycling solar panels, repurposing solar panels?
I like the idea that I just heard about the students competing around ways to do this. There's a lot of solar activity on campus, from race cars to, you know, microgrids. And I think I was just on a call earlier today with my research team, not my research team, my professor's research team. And one of the students on the team was, thank you. One of the students on the team was an undergraduate student who won a competition about how to best build education between kids and parents around energy efficiency. And they took their model to the Oak Ridge National Laboratory and they won, and it related to NREL, and now she's going to take this internship at NREL. So I just feel like students have all the answers. I mean, especially in a situation where they can work with a group and brainstorm. Anyway, I love that idea. I don't know if that's what that suggestion was in, you know, in with this as an option.
Good.
Kind of related to this, Commissioner, about recycling of lithium batteries, because I know you're passionate about electric vehicles, and I was researching a little bit about what Europe is doing on this, and I know Norway in particular is having issues because there are so many electric cars in Norway. They've just really taken off there. Colder climate, who would have known? But anyway, and so there are very few plants that will take those batteries. I think Belgium, Germany, and Canada are some of them, and they take those batteries and they recover the copper, the nickel, but it's a combustion process, and apparently that lithium is burnt off, so they're not able to recycle the lithium very well. They are looking at other metallurgical processes of extracting that lithium out, but I'm not even sure exactly what's happening in the US in terms of lithium recycling. From my understanding, it is very, very difficult. So I imagine, Commissioner, as part of your mandate for recycling, you also want to consider electric vehicles and especially the batteries too. I imagine that's on your plate too, correct?
It is, and during the integrated resource plan, I had heard about this Second Life EV battery project at UC San Diego that, what's the name of the EV company out there, charging company? Easy Go, maybe. I forget the name of it, but I talked to the VP, Jonathan Levy, and he gave me an idea of what he thought it would cost to, to conduct an experiment with this. And so we were able to put this into our integrated resource plan and asked Georgia Power to spend up to $250,000. I know that's not a lot of money, but that's what Jonathan said it would cost to basically take a shipping container, fill it full of used Nissan Leaf batteries that were being basically, that were sitting in a warehouse somewhere. We found out we could buy them for $900 a piece, and then use a battery management system, which there's a lot of state-of-the-art stuff coming out on that right now. But we use a battery management system, and then basically charge other EVs from these old EV batteries. So this is kind of a repurposing, and it's going to be done. Georgia Power's working on it now, and so we should be able to learn some things from this. There's a similar project in Birmingham that we discovered, and then we've got the California project. So, I would love to see someone like Cox Enterprises, for example, who, with their Cox Conserves program, they have this stuff in their DNA. They're serious about it. They don't really care about the publicity or even if it necessarily makes them any money. But for them to be able to take some old solar panels coming off one of their projects or off of someone else's project, and figure out how to use these in a constructive way, even if we're not hooking them up, even if we're just using them for shade, there's still some value in being able to say we repurpose these. And so I think repurposing is getting a lot of attention, and there's a lot of materials that get repurposed. And I'm interested in us trying to do both repurposing and recycling of the panels.
Yeah, one
I want to add
concept would be building on what Becky said, working with students and doing an adopt a school, adopt a science classroom, and for a panel that would still be functional, even if at a reduced output, making a kit of materials and a not curriculum. Teachers don't like the word curriculum, but as an enrichment, just to give kids, some gizmos and things to play with. So that's one suggestion that I've heard that we've never really worked on. But let's say if you had 30 different science teachers that wanted to do this, and you had 30 functional panels, even if they weren't state of the art in any way, but for use in just hands-on experimentation. And maybe they get two, maybe they get one to take apart and play with, and one that continues to work on an annual basis in the classroom in an enrichment type program.
Yeah, I love that. I mean, we could go so far as to give them a pavilion in a box, right? So, if your school signs up and is a part of Georgia Power's Learning Power program, one of the things that we want to offer you is the opportunity to build at your school a picnic pavilion that's covered in solar panels. So we're going to send you 50 panels. We're going to send you everything you need to do this, the pylons, all the material with the instructions. And this is something that you'll be able to, that if your school signs up to do this, you can build this pavilion on your school property as a pavilion. And whether we hook it up or not is a whole nother story. But there's plenty that thing would get used every day by kids and by teachers taking their students out there to get out of the hot sun. If it's hooked up, that's even a bigger bonus. Now, obviously, getting an inverter and, that may involve some cost, but I did double Georgia Power's Learning Power budget this year, right? So we gave them double what they had. Or maybe they had, Jamie, they had 3 and I gave them another $1 million.
Yeah, that's correct.
Yeah. And so, I mean, how many inverters can you buy for, for school picnic pavilions, that, with $50,000 or $100,000? I don't know, James, can you take a new inverter and use it with old panels, or can you not connect the technology?
You can. I would caution you on pavilions. I mean, when you're making a structure, even though it doesn't have doors or walls, you're still building a building. So you have structural constraints, you have to trench and run wire there, and you run into a lot of cost. So, what I was building on kind of Becky's thing was a very low cost thing, is giving some kids some hands-on. And I've done that over the years when we've had older panels or scratching din, or just putting them to use in science projects. Scouting girls and Boy Scout projects have done it. So something very, very simple, and literally I tell them, you got to pick it up. You got to come and get it. Here's the panels, you got to buy the kits. SunPower does have a more formal enrichment type solar energy education program, but there's always cost involved. So, the SunPower program is one of the more polished and professional that I've seen, but, staying away from the curriculum word, keeping it enrichment, and literally, giving them a couple panels, one to disassemble and make, many parts and many projects with, and one to have for a little bit larger things, might be a very low touch, low cost kind of thing.
That's a great idea. Charlotte, what idea did you have there you want to share with us? Charlotte, you want to unmute yourself? And we can't see you. Pull the camera down.
Hi, y'all.
Hey.
Yeah, I mean, my husband is an engineer, and when he was in high school and college, he was in several different STEM type groups, and getting those materials, even if they were not functioning, was a great opportunity for them to experiment and try things. We're still pretty close to Blacks in Engineering. There's a student version and a professional group as well. And so they come up with interesting things to do with these kids all the time.
Yeah, so what do you think about that idea that James and Becky are talking about, giving participating schools 2 solar panels and some instruction about how the technology actually works?
Yeah, I mean, I think there are more groups out there than you might think. I myself grew up in junior achievement. It was a big part of my life, and a lot of it was partnering with an engineering company, or I know I'm from St. Louis, so there was an electric company that worked with our little group, and they brought kits in for us to work on. So I think that this material, you may see it as something that's decommissioned, but for kids who probably have never seen this stuff up close, it's raw material that they don't have to worry about. So I don't think you should second guess if it's a kid, but maybe talk to Morehouse or talk to APS, and to see if their science teachers can come up with their own ideas for it.
Yeah, Crystal, how about you? Good to see you today.
Hey, yes, I'm sorry I came in a little bit late. I was trying to find the little Zoom thing. Yeah, I think I like the kind of like implementing it into education, and I think it'd actually be really good for high schools. Like, because I'm sitting here and I know what solar panels are. I don't know the logistics behind how they actually work and like the parts that fall apart with them and stuff. So I think if like it was actually made a part of like maybe even high school curriculum and stuff, I think it would get more knowledge out there to students. And like if it's more of like a common everyday thing and they know more about it, then they can go ahead and further on into school and learn more stuff, because we want to kind of develop, from what I get, we want to develop around maybe like making it better, I guess, like improving, advancing in that kind of technology. Like it's good right now, but it could be better. It'd be better if they were more efficient. It'd be better if they took up less space. That's like less waste when you're, when they are decommissioned, if we had like a lot less solar panels and they were like smaller, it'd be a lot easier. And it seems like it needs like more research and study behind that to move that forward. And I feel like if it was more like common and like readily available to students like throughout everywhere, then I think it would you know what I'm trying to say.
Well, this is something I'm gonna go to the Learning Power folks and just pitch this idea of them donating a couple of scratch and dent panels with some instruction to the science teacher, maybe the physics class, maybe it's just an 8th grade, physical science class or whatever. So I do think it's a great idea, and I think it would be easy for us to incorporate, and hardly any money at all to add that to the Learning Power curriculum. It's good. Anybody else on this topic of solar recycling, solar decommissioning, moving forward, how we need to handle this?
I just wanted to add a quick comment to what Sol was talking about regarding lithium-ion battery recycling. The value in the current generation of technology is in the cobalt. And as I remember, lithium is the most prevalent element in the Earth's crust, so we're not exactly running out of it. Next generation lithium iron phosphate batteries have negative value. They're currently, well, before COVID, they were a charge item of about $4 a pound to recycle them, and nothing toxic in them. So you really have to think about, is this worth it?
Yeah.
Anyway, if no one else has anything, I think we've
Hey, Becky, yes.
Just real
recycling.
quick,
Crystal,
Becky has something. Becky,
I know that I had a chance
Okay.
to talk earlier, but I was thinking while everyone was talking that, it seems like there's decommissioning and recycling as like two different things. And like that people here are talking about what's the way we can get the most life out of one of these panels through all these programs with kids. And I put in some information about how Georgia Tech has an outreach program already that is about STEM, and I'm sure other colleges do too. And so how to disseminate this type of thing largely into the community. I mean, you've got lots of neighborhood groups and of course schools, and lots of schools have focus on STEM in particular. So I feel like, with the right push, the sort of the decommissioning, the step before recycling could really elongate the life of these arrays, but also the recycling, I feel like, is still a big component that we didn't really get to as far. I was late, so I probably missed it, but what does that look like as far as the actual materials that cannot be used in the same form as a solar array, and what does that look like? I think is still out there.
Yeah, I'm concerned that we're landfilling glass because we can't even get it recycled, and that's pretty simple. And so you get all these additional complicated materials. I mean, obviously, if there's a value for it, copper. I mean, yeah, people steal that stuff to recycle it.
I mean, Tim, I've had people tell me recently that nothing is actually being recycled right now, and that the whole recycling industry has fallen apart, that China won't take it, India won't take it, and that that even stuff that people thought they were recycling at Mercedes-Benz isn't actually being recycling. Curbside, I haven't researched my curbside recycling to see if they're actually doing it. I mean, we meticulously put aluminum and glass and paper in there and try to do the right thing. And I'm being told that it's all just going into landfills. So that's a little bit of my pushback on these people wanting to know about recycling of solar panels. If they're not talking about recycling in general, the solar industry, we don't like to be held to higher standards than other businesses. So if you're not going to, have to recycle a shopping center when you decommission it, why do we have to have recycling and decommissioning? And, although I want all those things, I mean, I'm a conservationist at heart. That's part of why I do what I do. But, putting additional requirements of bonding, decommissioning, recycling on our industry is just, the opponents of clean energy looking for levers to slow us down, to decelerate what we're doing. And, I'm happy to go talk to the rural caucus. As I said, I love rural issues, and I'm happy to talk with them. But a lot of these are being perpetuated by our opponents and not people that are really sincere about recycling.
Yeah, and I believe that's true. But I'm not an enemy of solar, and I'm concerned about it. So because, of the videos that Julian showed the other day of shredding a solar panel, and so I guess it's just continuing to bug me, and I want to continue to work towards a solution. And right now we don't really have one. We don't have a need for one, but how do we get ready for that, right? So that's kind of what this rural caucus is asking us to tell them. What's going to happen? What's going to happen in their county with that material? What are the options? What do we recommend? That's why I'm interested in learning more. Well, let's get an update. Crystal, we only have a few minutes left on our call, so we're going to end it promptly at 4. Crystal, can we get any kind of update from you about your project that you're working on at Georgia Gwinnett?
Yeah, I'm actually waiting to hear back from my professor because I got an email this week, and I guess this would be good for like other students on the call to find out regarding an an RCC fellowship. And basically, like with the last correspondence I had with my mentor was, finding a way, like they said the administration would probably be more, receiving of this idea if it was like a student project, right? Well, this RCC fellowship application that I received this week, which I'd have to apply by today, they extended the deadline, is basically, and it kind of has the same synergy as this whole thing I'm trying to do. An opportunity designed for students who have a passion for sustainability and environmental justice. The part of the program, students will work on a campaign or project on your campus to promote sustainability over the course of the next academic year. Current fellows that have engaged in ambitious projects, you can go to their site and see, like, they do like tackling campus food insecurity, stuff like that. Students accepted into the program receive $2,000 stipend over the course of the year to go towards their work. And you can get published through the RCC over like the work that you're doing on campus. And I thought that kind of like went good. I was like, that's a cool way to turn it into a project and have a little bit of money put towards, getting it done. So I've sent that to my professor, and I'm waiting to hear back because I have to apply by today, the end of the day today.
Wow.
Proposal, and I need a letter of recommendation from the professor. But it's for students. So I mean, if you're trying to work on some kind of a project on your campus, and you want to, it's like for the whole academic year, so like a year long. I'm thinking like this kind of project's probably going to take longer than a semester, probably take like a year, and this kind of goes with that. It's like a synergy with it. So that was like a new development. That's what I'm currently trying to work on right now. I think that'll go good with it if it works out.
Great. So you need me to write you a letter of recommendation and email it over to you in about 20 minutes?
Yeah, well, they said I needed a professor recommendation.
Oh, sorry.
Yeah. But I'll definitely put you like in the proposal idea. I'll be like, I was doing this. Commissioner Tim Echols will help me out there. So yeah, that's what I got so far. But I haven't heard back yet. Like I said, it's this is finals week for us. And I know they're extremely busy grading finals and getting all the final grades in because they extended it a week because of our 2-week out thing. So yeah, hopefully I hear back from her.
Okay, well, let me know how I can help you on that. It's a great idea. Becky or anybody else have anything for the good of the order today before we end our call at 4? Any other things you guys are working on?
No, sir. I apologize for being late. Good luck, Crystal. You're going to get it.
Yeah, I hope so. That'd be kind of cool.
We haven't had much of a chance to hear from Charlotte today. Do you have anything to offer?
I apologize. I was paying attention. I just finished all my coursework and I'm trying to get ready for my capstone. And I think my capstone is going to be really interesting, but I'm scared to death that I picked something that is really huge. So I'm praying for myself.
What is your capstone going to be on?
Well, it's going to be on airline miles and fuel consumption year over year. So we're going to build a Bayesian model of the miles during the pandemic compared to the same time last year. Because apparently the aviation community has been wanting to build a model for a long time on what would happen if there was a huge decline in miles traveled. And up until this point, it was just speculation. And so it has actually happened. So I'm going to try to make a model for it.
I picked my daughter up at the airport day before yesterday, riding underneath on the north deck, looking out into the north hourly lot, completely empty. You know, all the parking lots pretty much empty. It's like a ghost town out there. It's like all the airport shuttle vans were just kind of parked over there on the side, you know, not being used. And it's just devastating. It's our #1 economic engine, and it's sitting there idle.
Well, it's funny because before I went to Georgia Tech, I designed the Atlanta Emergency Preparedness Institute, and I had to understand everything about Hartsfield-Jackson. And people don't understand that when something happens to aviation, the trickle-down effect is just crazy. So the impact on freight was an unintended consequence. So the freight miles are actually going up. And so we're going to be looking at the impact of freight because of the decrease in passenger miles. And then the EU compared to the US is completely different. And then the oil producers and what that's doing to both oil prices and what it's doing to aviation stock. So I don't know if I'm going to be able to do all of it, but it's my capstone. So
Wow, fascinating. Anybody have anything else before we end our call today?
Commissioner, I just want to thank James for what you said today. It kind of set I think you are in a lot of agreement on kind of decommissioning and end of life and all of that, but ultimately it will be the commissioner's tone that we send over. But thank you as always.
All right, y'all. Have a great weekend. Hope to see you soon. Thanks.
See ya.
Great to be with y'all. Be
Thank you,
safe.
James. Thank you.
Bye. Thanks.
Bye. Have a good weekend.
You too.